Greetings and salutations. Thanks for hanging out with me for a while. In this video, we're going to talk about GNOME Boxes, which is software that lets you create virtual machines on your Linux system. And it will also allow you to log into machines running somewhere on a network using desktop sharing protocol like RDP or VNC. We're not going to look at that particular aspect of the software simply because of the fact that I don't have anything to log into. And that's not something I'm really terribly interested in. If I need to get into machines on my network or servers up in the cloud that I work with, I usually do that with SSH, and I'm very happy with that. But I am very interested in the virtual machine aspect, so that's what we're going to focus on today. If you are looking for a very quick, concise how-to video that's going to be informative and authoritative, this ain't it. I'm going to ramble on here for about 20 or 30 minutes. That's how we roll around here, and a lot of folks like it because it's a lot of fun to poke around and play with software and see what you can get it to do. But if you're not down with that, then see ya. All right, now that the folks who are perpetually in a hurry are gone, let's start talking about GNOME Boxes. First of all, I want to say thank you to those of you who recommended that I give it a try. I was kind of reluctant at first simply because of the fact that I had tried this early on in its development and I didn't really like it. I didn't think that it was going to be something that would serve my needs. And so I was kind of like, well, I don't know. I've tried a bunch of other things. I'm trying to look for an alternative to running things in VirtualBox. I have been a VirtualBox user, well, since I switched over to Linux full-time and got rid of all the Windows in my life. So that's been 5 years ago now. And in the last year or so, VirtualBox has become more and more problematic for me. First of all, the performance is really, really slow on my hardware. I don't know why, it just doesn't like it. And the other thing is that I have had numerous issues with the user interface not working the way it's supposed to. Like, for instance, if I would full screen a virtual machine, then I would lose keyboard and wouldn't be able to type in the virtual machine. And then it would be a real fun task trying to figure out how to get it out of full screen mode to gain control of it again, stuff like that. And another problem that I noticed recently is that I would open up a virtual machine and it would open up in a window and I would try and resize that window or move it around. It would be stuck. So I really had to find something new, and I've tried all kinds of different alternatives in the last few months. And I went ahead and used Boxes, and I kind of found that, hey, the later versions of Boxes, they're pretty cool. Now, like most GNOME software, it is very simple and simplified in the way you use it. And that's kind of cool because I'm to a place in my life where I really don't want to sit and tweak and play around with a lot of things. I'm looking for stuff that just kind of works. So that's where I'm at. So that's working for me. And the other thing is that I need to be able to just do basic stuff with virtual machines. I'm not trying to create this perfect environment in which I'm going to be playing games in. No, this is for software testing, demonstrating things in video, stuff like that. So I really don't need a full-on super virtualization thing going on with like GPU pass-through and all these little tweaks. I don't need that at all. Just need something that's going to be stable, reliable, and it's going to work. And I think Boxes is going to do that for me. What we're looking at here is the documentation. I'm going to put a link to that in the video. I can tell you that, like all of the documentation from the GNOME project, it is very simplified, extremely Spartan. Just like the operation of most GNOME software, they try and keep it as simple as possible, but I will include it anyway. Let's talk about installing this. I went off on the interwebs and started looking for how to get this installed. The last time that I tried it, I think I just typed in, sudo apt install GNOME Boxes and turned it loose, and then it didn't work very well for me. And of course, with a little bit of research, I found out that you actually have to make sure that certain dependencies get installed, and then you need to do a little tweaking. So the first set of commands here are for Ubuntu 18.04, which is where I originally tried this. So this would apply to anybody running Ubuntu or Linux Mint, Elementary OS, anything based on Ubuntu 18.04. This is what you're going to need to do. First, you run this command where you install these packages. And the double Y here, that basically just tells the apt command, do it. Don't ask me any questions, just do it. And it will install GNOME Boxes, it will install qemu-kvm, and libvirt-bin. And then this command right here, this will add you to a group called kvm, which will give you permissions to access those machines. And for those of you who have been astutely following my videos where we've talked about working in the terminal and using bash commands, you will notice that this is a different command than what I showed you. I showed you user add. Well, this is user mod, and just does exactly the same thing. It just does it in a different way. And then finally, we have this sed command down here that puts this information into qemu.conf. And this is only for Ubuntu 18.04. And what this is supposed to do, according to the source that I got it from, is make it so that you're not being prompted for a root password every time that you open a virtual machine. So I went ahead and ran this command. Now, when I went to install this on Ubuntu 19.10, I found out that first of all, this package isn't even in the repositories, so I just dumped that from the end of the command, and then I added myself to the kvm group using this command right here. And then I didn't bother with this because I found out there was not a qemu.conf file at all. So I just didn't do that, and it didn't seem to matter because I haven't been prompted for my root password. Now, once you get your virtual machine set up, and assuming that it is a Debian-based system, you can use sudo apt install to add these two packages right here that will give you certain features, you know, kind of like if you're used to using VirtualBox, how you have to install guest editions, and there's also software that you install with VMware as well. This is the same kind of deal. You just do it from within the system, and seems to work okay. So that's the basic instructions on how to install it. I don't know about other distributions. I've only done this on Ubuntu, and this is how I did it. You can give it a shot. Your mileage may vary. I'd like to hear what you run into if you're trying to install it on other systems. So we're looking at my Ubuntu 19.10 desktop, and as of the day that this is recorded, it's not quite out officially yet. That's coming up on the 17th. So today, as you can see, it's like the 15th, or the 14th rather. So we got a few days to go. I was a day off. So you open up the program. It's really quite simple. There's not a whole lot as far as interface controls are concerned here. You can look at all of your machines. You can look at your local machines, or you can look at remote machines, and I don't have any of those set up because I have no need for that. And then if you want to create virtual machines, you can do one of two things. You can come down here to log into a remote machine, and then you just put the URL in, and then it'll create the back end here so that you have something to click on to log into that machine. If you're going to be creating a new virtual machine, well, you got lots of choices on how you can do that. So this is actually pretty nifty. See, you can choose to install Red Hat. We've got Fedora here. We got stuff on this list here. If that's not enough for you, you can come over here. There's more here, right? Like you can do, you can build a server right here just with one little click, and it'll go and download the file and everything. And then you have all kinds of different OpenSUSE choices, different kinds of Fedora, different kinds of Ubuntu's. Pretty cool. I'm going to show you how to do it from a file today because that's kind of how we're used to doing it, is downloading a file and then installing from there. And the other thing about the Boxes program is that if you're used to using something like VMware or VirtualBox, you usually create the machine first, you tweak all the settings, and then you install your virtual machine in it, you know, whatever you're trying to run. This is the other way around. You install it first and then you tweak it, or at least kind of mostly. So if the Boxes program recognizes what you're installing, not recommends it, you can do whatever you want. We go back here to downloads. It's where I need to be. Going to ISO. Then it gives you all kinds of really cool options. So I'm going to click on Ubuntu 18.04. And you notice that the first thing that it gives us the option to do is create an express install. So I could just turn that on, give it my name, add a password, and it's gone. It's just doing it. That's pretty cool. But I'm not going to do that. We'll do it a little bit of a slower way. So then we get to customize things. And what we want to do is add, let's bump that memory up a little bit to 4 gigabytes. And then we'll just go with the 16.1 gigabyte for the virtual disk size, because that's plenty for Ubuntu. And then we would click here, and it would go on, and it would boot up from our image file, which is what we're looking at right here. And then we will be able to install our machine. Now, this will probably run a lot faster if you were running this off of a solid state drive, which I am not. I am running this off of a spinning Caviar Black 7200 RPM drive, but even so, it's actually pretty zippy considering that I'm capturing HD video while I'm doing this. And of course, you do have to keep in mind as well that this is loading from that ISO image file, which is using something called squash.fs, which is like a compressed format to store things, and that is slow as well. So it'll come in here, and then we can, I think it's going to give us the option next to either install Ubuntu or try Ubuntu, which is kind of normal, what we normally see. We're not going to install Ubuntu because you guys don't need me to see me install a virtual machine. Now, right now, it's not scaling. You get kind of a, I think that like 800 by 600 it almost looks like. It's probably a little bit bigger than that. But that's enough to go ahead and try Ubuntu. So we'll go ahead and load the desktop. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing this from an ISO image file, and they run particularly slow. So this is going to take it a second or two to do. Actually, while it is doing this, I'm going to go ahead and boot up Linux Mint, so that can be booting in the background. And yes, you can have more than one running at once. One of the things that happens is that, like right now I have 2 machines booting up at once, is that the display gets a little confused, and sometimes it'll jump from one machine to the next. You see, like right now we have a blank screen because we're waiting for the Ubuntu to load, and it jumped over to Linux Mint. It actually did it because that's the next thing that happens on the screen. And so this is where we have to log in to Linux Mint. This is already pre-installed. So I'm going to go ahead and let that load the desktop, and then we'll go back over here to Ubuntu. Now that has loaded up. This is our virtual machine for Ubuntu. That we could install now if we wanted to, but I just kind of wanted to open it up. With Ubuntu, it recognizes the system, and Ubuntu is set up already with the little bits of spice that we need to be able to do things like auto scale, which is why that happened. So this will auto scale. And if you want to get out of full screen mode, just come up here and grab this bar like that, and then click on it, and then it'll rescale again. Get a few artifacts on the screen. We can let that run while we go over here and check on our Linux Mint install and see if we've got our desktop, and yes, we do. Now over here, even though I have installed those spicy things, I'm not getting auto scaling. I think that's because it just can't talk to the desktop. Remember, this is a GNOME piece of software, so when GNOME recognizes that GNOME is running in the virtual machine, it can talk to each other. But in Linux Mint, it works just fine, even though Linux Mint complains about being in software rendering mode, which usually means it doesn't have enough video memory or it doesn't detect acceleration. It runs really well. So if I full screen Linux Mint here, and this is 19.2, this is the latest version of Linux Mint, you can see this is really, running well for being in a virtual machine. And those of you who have seen past videos where I have run Linux Mint know that things like this menu would be really slow. And it runs just fine. And if you're only running one machine at a time and everything's in kind of a stable state, this seems to be really stable. I haven't had an issue with things crashing on me in place. Just like when you just leave things running, they just keep running. So let me go ahead and get out of the full screen mode here. Let's go back and before we jump into a machine, we've got two of them running now. I want to show you how you would change the properties on this machine because, like I said, we install it first. Now, if I don't like the name of this, then I can just change this. I just right-clicked with the mouse and chose properties from that little menu that popped up. And I can change this to Ubuntu 2 if I want to. And then we really can't change the broker. It's Spice, or QEMU rather, and Spice. That's fine, no problem. We can go in here and look at under System, and we get this little monitor here. It tells us how much the virtual machine is using CPU and the I/O and the network. And right now it's not doing anything because it's just sitting there. We can force a shutdown, or we can restart the machine here. We can look at the log. And another thing that we can do is we can set this whether we want it to run in the background or not. I like to have them run in the background, but maybe you wouldn't like that. So I'm thinking that what it does here, or at least my experience is that as soon as you click off of it, it pauses the machine. The machine goes into a suspend state. And as soon as you go back to it, it picks up where it left off. But I leave them and let them run in the background, and they work just fine. So let me go ahead and show you some of the other things here. You could add this to the favorites if you wanted to. You can create and call this a favorite. We can remove it from favorites. We can force a shutdown. We can clone the machine, and we can delete the machine. So let's go ahead and jump in here real quick. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. And so you can see how that works. Go ahead and power that off. And we'll take a look around at some of the machines that are already installed that can be doing that. And we can look at the properties of the other machines here. So in this machine, for instance, we have created snapshots. It automatically creates a snapshot of the virtual machine as soon as it's installed. So this would happen right at the moment when the machine's installed and you reboot. It essentially assumes that you've installed it and it's ready to go, and it creates a snapshot. You don't have to keep those around. You can get rid of them. I just left them there. It's no big deal. So that's another thing to be aware of. And then we can look here at devices. This machine's not running, so it's not showing us anything. But this is where you would have like the DVD in the drive, which would be the ISO. So you could put an image file in there if you wanted to. I don't know if you have a host DVD drive in your machine, how you would connect that up, or if it recognizes it or not. I have not played with it. I do not have any images currently burned on DVD that I could drop in and try and install from. So I don't know whether that works or not, and I haven't even looked in the documentation because most of this time if I'm creating virtual machines, it's coming from an ISO file that I have downloaded. And this seems to be taking its time shutting down, or maybe it'll try and boot up. Oh, I see. It hung up because I didn't press enter. So now we don't want to keep this machine around. Well, it's no big deal to get rid of it. Just click delete. And I went ahead and undid that because, oh no, it just looked that way. It gives you a second chance. I thought for a second I deleted something else, but I didn't, so it's perfectly all right. Didn't mean to confuse anybody if I did. So what else can you do with your virtual machines once you got them up and running like this? Well, if you have those little Spice tool things running in there, then you can come over here and you can send keyboard input to it, like alternate control backspace, or you can switch to a TTY. So let's switch to a TTY in this machine. And then I can go ahead and log in here. So that if that's something that you're used to doing with your keyboard inputs, then you can do it from here. So I've logged in there. I want to get back to the desktop, which I think is on 7, and it is. Yes, I was right. So that's pretty cool. Does not auto scale. I don't know whether I mentioned that or not, but if it doesn't recognize it, it doesn't auto scale. I don't know how to set that up. If you know how to do that, if there's something that you change in there, let me know, like getting it to work with Cinnamon or the Mate desktop, because right now it doesn't work. But that's okay, because what I was able to do was go in and set the display size, change the resolution, and make it so it works with my monitor. So this is what it looks like in full screen, and that's fine. I've got no problem with that. So if you don't know quite what I'm talking about here, let's go ahead and open up Ubuntu real quick. Let's get my Ubuntu running. And I guess it doesn't matter. We'll do 1804. I've got 1910 installed here as well. Matter of fact, wait a minute, I won't open two Ubuntus. That'll slow things down. So what else can you do? We go over here to this little menu, and now we have other options available. We can send a file to the virtual machine. Now, this is if those Spice tools are installed. So let's grab something out of my bin directory here and send it over. A little script I have here called P2V. And if I double-click that, which opens it up, it just sends it right on. Now, it did that thing where it switched over again. So there's my Ubuntu coming up. So let me do that again so you see what you see on the screen when it does it, because it actually does show you what it's doing. Let's go back to Linux Mint. So there's my file, and it opens right up. Let me take that out of there and do it one more time, and this time hopefully it won't switch over while we're doing it. So I'm going to send a file, and this time around I will go into bin once again, and I will send a different file. Let's send it sync all. Okay. Boom, there it goes. And you can any size file you like. So that's pretty cool. And that seems to work very reliably, whereas in VirtualBox, you could turn that on and it kind of works sometimes, and sometimes it wouldn't work, which is a big pain in the butt. Now, let me show you what I'm talking about, auto scaling here. So if I full screen this, you notice that it adjusts, and now we're at the native resolution for the monitor. And I can turn that off. And then I can actually make this smaller, and it'll still do that. So that's pretty cool. I would like to figure out how to do that with a Cinnamon desktop or other desktops besides GNOME. So if you know how to get that going, put it in the comments. Ladies and gentlemen, that's about it. This is how this works. That's all you have to do to make this do what it's supposed to do. And there's not a whole lot of other controls to it. You can clone virtual machines. The way that I interact with getting files into the machine, this works. I think the network is set up as NAT, but fortunately for me, the SSH works. So let me show you how that works here. I'm going to open up a terminal inside this particular virtual machine. And if I want to log in, let's just log into the host machine. And I have a shortcut called SSHN. Okay. Oh. My number key wasn't on. That's why it went crazy. So I have just logged into the host machine that we're running on right now. Using SSH. Make that a little bigger. It's a little bit easier to see. So just to show you some other things that you can do here, let me go ahead and exit. If I want to grab a file off this machine, let's do the same thing we did before. So what I can do is I can use a program called SFTP. And I have a shortcut called SFTPN. Let's do it the long way so you can see what I'm talking about. SFTP, and then you got to put in the IP address for this machine. And it asks for the password. I don't have SSH keys on virtual machines. I don't really need to do that, but I can get files here. So if I want to get a file from this machine, we're going to get from bin, and we'll just get a file that's in there I know called nr. And it says, okay, it's there. I just pulled that down, exit, and I'm done. So if I wanted to log into another machine on the network, the only one up right now is the host. All the other machines are asleep in the house because I've been sitting here playing around doing this video. I would use SSH. Let's go ahead and clear that. And then I'd put in 192.168.0.11. And why is it? Thank you. And now I've logged into this machine again. So my little alias there is real simple. It's I'll just show it to you. Less. And then we're going to look in the bin directory because that's my local bin. And then we are going to look at sshn. And see, it's all it is. It just kind of makes it so I don't have to type all that stuff and then screw it up. So that works out fine. And there's another one in here that's called sftpn. Thank you. Using one hand because I got a microphone. Never mind. Here you go. That's what that looks like. This is that command. And all it basically does is just fill in all of that because I don't have name resolution on my network. Those of you who are familiar with SSH might be familiar with the idea of logging into the machine by name. Well, you have to have a name server on your network, and a lot of modern ISP provided routers and stuff like that, it doesn't help you with that. So there you go, gang. What else can I show you? Well, first of all, let's get into some of the technical aspects of it. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down because I'm sure you guys some of you guys want to know this. And go ahead and shut this one down as well. Well, actually, I just closed the application. Can I open that back up, please? Thank you. Let's see here. What I want to do is close down Linux Mint. And it doesn't have the button over there, and I'm looking in the wrong corner. That happens. All right, well, I did accidentally delete one of my virtual machines. I thought I had. Which one was it? I deleted Ubuntu Mate. That's okay. I've got a backup. I'll get it back. So, where are these things stored? They are stored in a directory in your local directory. So it's in here. Let's use MC and we'll find out where they are. So if I go into local, go to share, we'll go to boxes. You'll see that we have a directory there. And then if we go into images, there are all of our existing virtual machines. So to get the one that I accidentally deleted back, I'm going to have to put unknown1 back in here because if it doesn't know what it is, this is what it actually calls the virtual drive, is unknown. Right there. So there you go. That is a look at how GNOME Boxes works. It's really, that's it. It's that simple. It's straightforward. It seems to work very well. I can use SSH, even though I think it's setting up NAT. I would prefer it to be bridged. But I really haven't looked that deeply into it, to tell you the truth. I could be wrong about that as well, because I just started adding stuff to it, and it just started working. So I had no problems, and I kept going, so I have stuck with it. So thank you for watching the video. I certainly do appreciate it. Your feedback is always welcome. You can check out EzeeLinux on the web for more about the EzeeLinux project, and that also links up to things like the EzeeLinux forum, which is a forum that we have for people who want to talk about Linux and get help with their Linux installations. If you're running Ubuntu or Linux Mint or something else, we've got pages in there where you can do that. Different forums. We have the Community Commons where you can talk about just about anything, and this is a very well moderated forum. We actually run the server from the OS on down, so it's not relying on some big corporate service. They're not siphoning your data off, or they can't take it away from us or change it. So we like that, and you can hang out with us if you want to. Check that out. Also, give Easy Linux a like on Facebook if you are a Facebook user, and of course, subscribe and like the video. That always helps, and share it if you like it. Thanks for watching. Certainly do appreciate it.